each with their fellow, speaking to each other, learning the truth from each other. Allahumma anta as-salam wa minka as-salam. O God, you are peace, and peace is from you. Adon ha-shalom, or Chenu ba-shalom. Source of peace, bless us with peace. And let us all say amen.
Amen.
So today's session, as well as our task force, really was inspired as a result of the ongoing conflict and tension in the Middle East and what's happening in America today in particular. That what we've seen happening in our society over this last year makes, I think, all of us as Muslims and Jews, as Americans, as Christians, as all people of goodwill in our country, realize that while American Muslims and Jews have in recent years often been at odds on national and local levels, and that sometimes these conflicts have produced bitter fights over policy at every government level, that we have a tremendous opportunity, and I would say responsibility, to turn some of the current stress and trauma in our national narrative on its head, and begin today to start to figure out how do we build a new movement of Muslims and Jews dedicated to working together, learning from and with each other, and serving as a model of pluralistic discourse. American Jews and Muslims, actually, we share more in common than our differences. And one of my teachers taught me years ago that you should never waste any crisis and see it as an opportunity. And so in our current political turmoil, I think that there's an opportunity in this post-election time for American Jews and American Muslims to build connections and partnerships with each other that I truly believe can lead beyond connections to true relationship. Our panel today will explore what opportunities exist for the Jewish community to work together with our Muslim brothers and sisters to counter the anti-Muslim bigotry and prejudice that seems to be permeating our American landscape these days, and how we can overcome differences in order to build Muslim-Jewish partnerships across our local communities. Moderating our panel today is Bob Silverman from the American Jewish Committee, and Bob serves there as the U.S. Director of Muslim-Jewish Relations. And our panel includes Imam Abdullah Antepli of Duke University. He's the campus minister of who serves as the director, the founding director of Duke University Center for Muslim Life. Symi, Rom-Rymer, and Ambereen. Ambereen's not here.
Unfortunately, Ambereen is very ill, so,
all right,
but she sends her best regards to everyone.
So Symi Rom-Rymer, who is one of the co-chairs of Salaam, Shalom, Sisterhood's DC chapter. My friend and colleague, Rabbi Bob Kaplan, who's the director of the Jewish Community Relations Council of New York City's Center for Community Leadership, and David Kurzmann, the executive director of the Jewish Community Relations Council of Detroit. So before I turn it over to Bob to moderate this panel, I want to express all of our gratitude to Rabbi Batya Steinlaw, who was instrumental in recruiting all of you, all of us, to do this panel today. And I look forward to us delving into the contemporary issues and setting the table of the questions we need to be deliberating over this next year.
Thank you. Thank you, Neal. Is everyone here? We don't need mics, right? Great. So I'm Bob Silverman. I want to start off by saying thank you to everyone in advance for getting involved in Muslim-Jewish relations right here in this country. It really is the right time to be doing this. And we have, I think, 45, maybe 50 more minutes. And I always find that back and forth in between panelists and with others to be very useful. So I'm going to start off by asking each of our 4 all-star panel members to say a few words about one of the highlights of Muslim-Jewish work that they're doing and one of the challenges. So one positive, one challenge going forward. And because this really is a group that I'm so honored to be with, because this is a group that's been in this field for a long time with a lot of experience. So let me start off with Rabbi Bob Kaplan.
Well, he has to go last. He beat us down. One really positive thing. So, my wife, Wendy Levinson, back there, she runs a really interesting program that sort of like is a time and place type thing that you just can't necessarily replicate. You just got to jump on it when it happens. About 6 or 7 years ago, I have a good friend that I met over a decade ago. He's an African imam from Gambia. His name is Musa Sheikh Musa Drama. And he had just opened a new Islamic school and mosque in an old parking garage in the Parkchester section of the Bronx. They used to have 60, 70,000 Jews. It's now down to about 60 or 70 Jews. And it has a very large African Muslim community, a very large Bangladeshi Muslim community. And I went to go visit him during Ramadan, walking around the place. And, you know, by the way, I have a great teacher that taught me it's always easier to prevent forest fires. His name is Smokey the Bear. He's my guru. He teaches us a lot. He really, you know, since I was a little kid, taught us it's always easier to make those social networks long before it happens than when it's happening, when you got to put out those fires. So went to go visit Musa during Ramadan 6, 7 years ago, walking through this place, and it was a maze, and it was a beat-up old building, and he says, here's the prayer room, and here's the offices, and here's the schoolroom, and here's the synagogue. Yeah. So I said to Musa, you've been fasting too much, it's Ramadan. So what are you talking about synagogue? Opens up the door, there's a big picture of Lubavitcher Rebbe's here. I said, so you got to tell me about this. There used to be 7 synagogues in that community. A whole lot of Jews. The last one closed up in 2004. When he found out there was a bunch of older Jews in the community who had no place to pray, he gave them a room. And there is now an active Chabad synagogue every Shabbat, every Yom Tov, and all the you know, Purim and Pesach and all that kind of stuff operating inside the mosque. We identified it. We connected to it. We did some programming around it. And then, what we do best as a JCRC is we don't need to run the program, so we don't need to be involved in the day-to-day. We found partners. We found the Riverdale Y. We found Manhattan College, which is a Catholic college, and we found the Islamic school, and they now have an ongoing program called the Synagogue and the Mosque. It's really unusual, but it's really important. It's really, really an important thing that these young folks are fixing and meeting and working with each other. With African Muslims, where most of them had no idea there was even a growing African Muslim community in the Bronx, because they're sort of real insular and they're sort of off the radar screen. And we tend to think of the black community as African Americans, maybe some Caribbeans, but certainly not as Africans. So that's one of the highlights, and that really is very cool, and really enjoy it. Tough stuff. Tough stuff was last week we had a big rally in the city of New York called Today I Am a Muslim Too. I was one of the speakers, because I also have a lot of friends. Smokey the Bear taught me well. And they were asking me to come up there. And on that stage was another person from the Muslim community who I just figured would be there, because I know her for about 15 years as well. It's the new rock star in the Muslim community of the United States. Whether you like her or you don't like her, she is a rock star. Her name is Linda Saussure. Well, you can only imagine what happened Monday morning. And that really makes it difficult. Navigating in and outside of all those intricacies, not only in our community, but in the Muslim community. Because not only did I get kicked in the head from some folks in the Jewish community, I got kicked in the head by some folks in the Muslim community as well. Because it isn't simple. It really isn't simple. And the stuff, if we think of this stuff as being simple, then we're really deluding ourselves. Right now, we're in the simple time. It's a complex world out there. Complex inside our own Jewish community, because we live in an incredibly complex community, politically, socially, religiously, etc. And the same thing goes on in the Muslim community. They're real complex too. The difference is we both live in our individual bubbles, and we don't lend complexity to the other.
Great, thank you, Bob.
Of course, all I'm wondering is how these Chabad Jews sneaking alcohol into the mosque.
Bob, got it.
I have a Duke student who I know is a Muslim, but he keeps showing up in Chabad Shabbat service on Friday night and pretending to be Jewish. And there's he has a far grandfather who was a Jewish. He has a dropout, so he's not entirely lying. And I said, I know you're not Jewish. You're Muslim. Why do you keep going there? He said, free alcohol. Good afternoon, everybody. It's wonderful to be here. I'm going to answer that question about conceptually. The highlight is, for me, my measure of success for any interfaith dialogue or any cross-religious, cross-faith relationship, engagement, or partnership, I have a very strict measure of success. I find only those interfaith conversations or cross-faith religious relationships, engagement, and partnerships. To me, the real success is if that conversation, as a result, makes you better believer, better practicer, better member of your own community as you simultaneously develop a relationship, appreciation, knowledge of the other faith tradition. And over the years of my relationship and my journeys to the world of Judaism and Jews, I have so many of those highlights. It's really incredible. There's a term, if you don't know it, you should know, coined by this, I believe he's Scandinavian bishop, called holy envy. Holy envy, like you make a journey, and similarities are all fine, but you find a difference. Something that doesn't exist in your own community, and you don't want to convert to that religion, but you just find a gem, a unique, a particular expression of something that you may exist in your faith tradition, but it's so uniquely articulated in other faith tradition, and you have a holy envy, you have a jealousy. I have so many of those with the world of Judaism and Jews, but of course the number one is Shabbat. I am so fascinated and obsessed by Shabbat that I think my love to Shabbat and my love to practice Shabbat or daven with the people who observe Shabbat in liberal way or traditional way, sometimes I overdo it. My son keeps saying, my father observes or celebrates Shabbat much more than many Jews we know. So I love it. As a faith person, as a religious person, and I respect the whole spectrum of Muslim expressions and also Jewish expressions. But if you put me personally in the Jewish mat, I'm a modern Orthodox Jew who is curiously interested in anything left and anything right. And I love this almost like a spiritual or intellectual feast. Shabbat, the unique expression of certain Yiddish words that I learned is amazing. There are so many highlights, but for the time, the low light is pretty much the opposite of this. When I see those relationships are so in the superficial level, really low light is, I love tension. I thrive in conflict and controversy because I see them as an educational opportunity. And what's dividing us, what's polarizing Jews and Muslims, they are not trivial matters. There are some serious matters. So my low light is when I see Jews and Muslims coming together, ignore all the elephants in the room, keep all these gorillas silent, and talk about the hummus and the halal chicken, kosher chicken. And it's okay to start there, but clearly this conversation will start there and end there. It's so clear. I remember going to a Jewish-Muslim conversation 4 or 5 years ago. At the entrance of the room, it's a Jewish-Muslim conversation, they give you a piece of paper saying, this group intentionally and deliberately promises not to speak Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And I left. Like, what is there to not, then if you're not going to talk about this, or if you don't aspire to, desire to get there, that you don't want to take this relationship into a level of maturity and sophistication and help that you will be able to talk about these difficult issues, that is so, quite honestly, dishonest to start any Jewish-Muslim conversations, to intentionally and deliberately ignore and say, I'm not going to talk about this. It's a low light. That superficial kumbaya singing sessions, that our common ancestor Abraham sessions is a low light to me. And if we are going to charge into some new territories, given the kind of Trump effect in our Jewish-Muslim relations, I hope one thing we will promise to ourselves is, in this renewed desire to build better Jewish-Muslim relationships, we may start in those kumbaya singing sessions, but we will promise to ourselves that we won't stay there, that we will charge into some honest, potentially problematic, but constructive, because those conversations, that's the last thing I will say, at its best, it's a waste of time. At its worst, unfortunately, it sort of prevents some more meaningful conversations to happen, and therefore it's destructive. It's potentially dangerous. On that happy note.
Well, it's a good thing I'm starting with the positives and not the negatives. So thank you all so much for being here. So I'm representing the Sisterhood of Salaam, Shalom, and the work that we're trying to do is actually very much what was spoken about in the introduction. It's pushing beyond connections to form those true relationships. You know, we meet in these very small groups of, I don't know, 10 to 15 people, 10 to 15 women, Muslims and Jews together, and we share a meal together, and we learn about each other. And it's not just about talking kind of about big issues. It really starts with meeting each other. Who are we? What are our backgrounds, especially as women? Do we have children? What does that mean? What do our gender roles play in our faith and in the greater society? And we found many points of connection, I think, in ways sometimes that we didn't expect. And it's based on those connections that then we can get to the broader conversations, and the fact that that we are able to do that it's not just the kumbaya moments as you talked about, but that we have something to build on. And that for me is a real highlight. So for instance, our group has been in existence now for about 1.5 years, and during election night we were all texting each other. How are you doing? How is it going? What are you seeing? You know, and we were all kind of anxious together.
I won't be honest, they were texting, what WTF?
Well, you know, but I think you know that we had this level of comfort with each other, and where we felt like we might not have other avenues to share those those real concerns, and we had each other. And so for me, you know, that's been a wonderful source of comfort and inspiration as we're going forward, and that continues to be with all of these other things that are going on right now. That to have that community to rely upon is really wonderful. I think as a challenge with this group and with other interfaith initiatives that I'm a part of, is really to get beyond those who are already interested in interfaith. And we have this issue in the Sisterhood, kind of reaching out to more conservative Jews, to reaching out to more conservative Muslims, to get Muslims to come and join. For a variety of reasons, you know, there are a lot of chapters that are wanting to start throughout the country, and they're having a difficult time finding Muslim women to join. And I think that is kind of one of the biggest challenges that I feel that we face, is how do we not talk to ourselves, but how do we get those who really could benefit from meeting each other and talking to each other and sharing these friendships and all of that, and discovering that there's a lot more to each other than kind of what we hear in our own religious faith bubbles. You know, how can we get those people engaged and involved? And that's, I think, that's kind of an ongoing struggle.
Can you tell me how many chapters there are?
Yeah, so
Did I move
so the Sisterhood itself is well, the Sisterhood itself started in 2010, but it really got going in 2013, and in 2013, I don't know, there were maybe 10 chapters, and then we slowly started to grow. We have annual conferences each year for the past 3 years, and so before this annual conference, I think we had about 50 chapters, and then we had an article written about us in the Times, and after that we have over 100 chapters, 150 chapters, and we're growing. I mean, the number of people who wanted to join a chapter, like in the first 2 days, was at least 2,000 women asked to join, or how they could meet other people. So yes, it's really growing very quickly.
As we Muslims say, Baruch Hashem.
Hi, good afternoon. So another local perspective here from Detroit. And actually, in thinking about this panel, I was reflecting on who was in Cleveland in May, right? It was May in Cleveland, right? Where we had no problems with chairs, right, Jessica? There were no issues with that ever.
Well, it's based in Cleveland.
Right. And it really truly was a highlight of my experience at that conference at JCPA 2016 to observe this conversation, to be sitting in your seats. And so I have to say, it's a huge privilege to be sitting here together, especially with you, Abdullah, because you were very inspiring to hear in that particular conversation. I joined JCRC Detroit a year and a half ago, which was a homecoming for me. I grew up in the Detroit area, and at the time I was hired to be executive director of JCRC. And 18 months later, I'm executive director of JCRC AJC. And we formed a partnership. And the reason I mention that in Detroit, JCRC and AJC came together in one office is not only because it's interesting, and I can talk to you offline if you're curious about what that entailed, but because for this subject, Muslim-Jewish relations was actually the most unifying aspect of our advocacy, and I should say our community relations agenda. It's really, that was the topic, that was the item that brought leadership together from both groups and said, wow, we can really realize something very powerful working together. And it was rooted in something that AJC Detroit had started in 2013, where there was a population study of the local Muslim and Jewish communities. And those familiar with Detroit, we have quite a large Muslim community. Arab American population in general, but it's quite diverse. Numbers 200,000, 250,000, and we have 65,000 Jewish people in Detroit. So that study created, which was the two communities looking at each other through the University of Michigan Dearborn, created the foundation for what we call building a shared future. And that's kind of the background for the challenge and the highlight. So the challenge in there, very structural challenge, identifying the right partner, right? How do we determine who we can be working with? How do we develop trust? And we've been very blessed in Michigan to have a valued partner in the Michigan Muslim Community Council. Every community should be so fortunate to have this kind of amazing partner. And I can't speak to really the formation of that partnership because I'm kind of new. But the reality is 4 or 5 years ago, it was the personal connection, the relationships, the trust building, two ways, right? Saying which group out there within the Muslim community will be able to withstand some potential backlash in working with us. Who can handle that? And things were different politically, right? 4 or 5 years ago, so maybe things are a little different now. But that's one. And two, who are we comfortable with? We spend a lot of time with that, who are we comfortable with, that we need to actually put ourselves in the shoes of our potential partners and give them, be sensitive to who has the structure to be able to kind of withstand any challenges that may come that way. And it's with that patience is essential, we found. That patience in building something, that this is not going to happen overnight, and that it does sometimes start with those conversations that seem a little superficial, and where we do have to define some boundaries of the conversation, but that if we have patience, but we're determined to get into the issues that really matter, or that we may perceive as matter, being the most important, then we can really achieve some gains. So the highlight for us has been the diversity of programming that we've been able to do. It's truly been exceptional. That study, Building a Shared Future, led to what we call a Shared Future lecture series, and it's been an established dialogue between a Muslim professor and a Jewish professor. We're getting actually hundreds now. We have nearly 200 registered on Wednesday to come out and have a conversation on Islamophobia. Last year we were talking about even more contentious subjects, actually, like difficult, loaded words, Zionism and jihad, and Whose land is it? And we really got into some great depth there. So the potential, and that's just a little piece of the whole puzzle of what kind of programming we can do, and I'm happy to get into more, that has been a great highlight for us.
Great. So, as moderator, let me start off with the first question, but then open it up to others. And so I'm going to ask both Symi and Abdullah, how do you get to the next stage? So you have this great network, right, Sisterhood. And I'm thinking of Abdullah's statement that, you know, kind of the challenge is moving beyond conversations about shared cultural things. How do you take this great network that's the Sisterhood and take it to the next level? And I want Abdullah's views on that too.
Well, you know, the Sisterhood model is really based on individual connections and individual relationships. This is very much a grassroots thing. It's person to person, and I think the way that you get to those more difficult conversations is by laying the foundation. You have to know each other. You have to feel comfortable with each other. There has to be a level of trust, and that doesn't come about, you know, from one conference or one weekend together. As wonderful as those are, and as worthwhile as those are, it really comes from, you know, an ongoing, slow building and strengthening of those connections. To be honest, so as I said before, our group has been meeting for a year and a half now. We have not actually talked about the Israel-Palestine conflict, and it's not so much that we are avoiding it, but we felt like we needed to be able to trust each other. That however difficult that conversation might be, and we are a diverse group in terms of, you know, in terms of our religious practice, in terms of our relationship with Israel and with Palestine and the Middle East in general and so forth. You know, but we felt like we couldn't be having that conversation without kind of creating a general sense of comfort and ease and really trust with each other. So I think that's
Yeah. I love Sisterhood of Salaam, Shalom, and the leadership is a very good friend of mine, Cheryl. And I attended the last year's convention at Drew University. And when I saw hundreds of women coming together as Jews and Muslims and trying to start a new conversation, I tweeted the picture and said the men so far have made a very lousy job in peace building. It's time that women step up. It was one of the most retweeted tweets of mine. And I welcome it. I think there's so much potential into it. I wanna answer your question humbly. Neither Sister Shalom, neither the Sisterhood nor the MLI program that I represent, there is really no silver bullet. There is no easy fix. There is no really somehow a magical button somewhere. If you only find and hit it, Jewish-Muslim relations will. The problems that divide us again, and the problem that we are facing is in decades in making. It has its religious roots. It has its ideological roots. It's not go away that easily. So at least I speak for myself. I don't pretend that we figured this out. But there are two things seems to be working in taking us to the next level. Two things. One, in my community, I'll speak for myself. The reason I went to Shalom Hartman in Jerusalem and wanted to bring now more than 100 Muslims studying 1 year Judaism as religion, Jews as people, Zionism as an ideology, and Israel as a state. When we go to Shalom Hartman, the program that I represent, it is not an interfaith dialogue. We don't go there and they tell us what they believe and we tell them what they believe. It is a one-way. Tens of Muslims are committing themselves to learn how Jews see themselves, how they understand these realities, how Israel or Middle Eastern conflict is playing a role in their lives here in the United States, to basically develop a respectful language between us, because the polarization and the dehumanization between Jews and Muslims have gone so far that there is not a common respectful language. There are certain trigger words that we use. We mean different, but it makes a different effect on each other. Can I tell Yecheskel's experience? Our friend from West Hartford, once Yecheskel Landau, one of the pioneers of Jewish-Muslim relations, he went to an Eid al-Fitr conversation, Eid al-Fitr celebration. At the end of Ramadan, after fasting for a whole month, Muslims turn into lit Christmas trees. All those Jewish brothers and sisters complaining for fasting for one day, like 1 day of the year. For God's sake, come and try my way and see how it works. And that's called Eid al-Fitr, joyous celebration, Muslim Christmas, Muslim Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah combined and 10 times. So after that, he went to speak to a group of Jewish community, and then he said, I just came back, Muslims celebrating Eid al-Fitr. And then one of the gentlemen from the front end said, what? Muslims are celebrating Adolf Hitler? Not only we sort of see each other in a very different lenses, we hear each other about each other, very different lenses as well. So the first thing I'm suggesting to take it to the next level, there is a great scale of lack of information. I don't want to say ignorance. Yeah, like we don't know each other. The kind of information that we are feeding about each other, those words appear different in the Jewish screen and the Muslim screen. It requires some education. If you are really serious about learning about Islam and Muslims, and I'm speaking out of experience, those Muslims that I took, those Muslims that they learned Judaism, Zionism, and Israel in Jewish terms, in Jewish vocabulary, in Jewish context, they came back incredibly skillful. They came back incredibly, they are very comfortable in Jewish spaces, and they know how to respectfully speak without triggering any emotional anxiety. But those Muslims, especially in the previous cohorts, when I took them to Jerusalem, they said, like, I believe in the mission of this. I believe there's a need for education. We believe that most of what we learn about Jews are toxic, problematic. But what can we do this in the United States? The biggest Jewish city in the world is New York City. Like, why can't we do this in Borough Park, Brooklyn? Why can't we do this in New York? I said, no, that's not enough to develop an education. You have to show a goodwill act. It's not enough to say most or majority of the American Muslims are two-state solutionists. They believe in the existence and the legitimacy of the state of Israel. Talk is cheap. Even if you develop a language and education, the skepticism and lack of trust is so thick between Jews and Muslims. We have to engage in trust-building relationships by engaging in goodwill acts. I said, we will get a lot of fear, a lot of pushback from our own community, but we have to go to Israel. We have to show that we are serious about this. We have to show the goodwill act. Then those unseen walls will come down between our Jewish brothers and sisters, and it's working. So I'm suggesting two concrete things. Education, learning Islam and Muslims in the Muslim context, not confining the entire Islam, entire religion and the Muslim community through the lenses of national security or Israeli-Palestinian conflict, not buying the propaganda of the media quickly. And like, Jews have incredibly sensitive, innate, they develop over time as a minority religion. You know, most Jews, when they see somebody who has an ounce of anti-Semitism, they sniff it out. They say, this guy doesn't like Judaism or Jews. Muslims are the same. Like most of Islamophobia or most of anti-Muslim bigotry, innocent bigotry, I receive it in the form of a compliment. People basically express what they think of me in the form of a compliment. Oh, you're an imam and likable. You're Muslim and somehow I can talk to you. And these are fine, but it shows what they think of me, or my religion, or my faith, etc. Muslims do that all the time as well, without even realizing. Some education, if you feel you are not educated enough, and some sort of goodwill acts.